All right. So I was explaining before the importance of reference, having a good collection of reference material when you're starting a character. Now, I was going to talk more about human anatomy. I don't think I went over the importance as good as I guess as good as I should when talking about human anatomy. It's awful. It's also reference to. Um, it's all part of that. You look for reference. You look for photo references, and you look at anatomy. And I think, well, I explained before. I don't know all the names of the muscles. I didn't never taken an anatomy course in college. Um, I I just took I took art classes. I looked. I've I have a collection of anatomy books, and there's a few that I always go to my go to anatomy books. I never sat down and studied all the names of the muscles. If you're an artist or um, or trying to get into wanting to become a professional artist as like creating characters, sculpting figures, um, toy design, or whatever. I don't think that you need to know all the names of the muscles to become an artist. To become an artist who creates figures, who creates action figures, who designs models. Um, Not for me. Well, I'm speaking for myself. Um, I don't. I've never sat down and studied all that to try memorizing all of them. So I think the best way to explain that, um, if you look at my work, if you've seen the things that I've done, and uh, want to be as good as I am, um, or think that my skill is good enough, then you're looking at somebody who hasn't studied, who hasn't memorized all the muscles, all the different bones and muscles, and different names, the scientific names of all that anatomical stuff. So you know that pretty much tells you you don't really need to know all that stuff. If you're, it's intimidating. I think people are intimidated by that aspect, and it scares people away from wanting to get into um, that kind of work. So uh, that's my um, that's my explanation. If anybody ever asks me, should I know like all the names? Um, they're just names. All you need to do, uh, all you need to know is how to recognize um, what they look like. Be able to recognize them, to the way familiarize yourself with the way that they look, uh, the way it's structured, um, and having And each time that you go into a project, creating a character or sculpting a figure, have those as your guide. Use the anatomy books as your guide. Even if you do know all the names of all the muscles, I met some, I met, well, let me say this first. Even if you do know all the names of the muscles, that's good. That's very impressive. But you still need to have it in front of you while you're working. Even if you're a professional. And that also touches another topic that I was thinking about. I think that people has this idea that in order to become a professional, you have to be able to create anything from memory, from what you remember what a figure looks like. You don't need any reference. That's totally incorrect. Even as a professional, I pretty much know that you will always be using reference, no matter what skill level you are. And I think the safe way to I think the state of mind, the mindset that you should have, is that you always strive to be a professional, to want to be able to sculpt or draw or paint something without looking at something, and being able to get to that level, but never expect to be at that level. I don't know if that makes sense, but the bottom line is you always you always use reference and practice doing it over and over and over again, having it as your guide, striving to be the type of artist that doesn't need reference, but never actually doing it or being able to get there. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that pretty much sums up the whole reference, needing reference, and needing like as much as you need as a guide to complete your project. And I don't know if you've ever been in a drawing class, or especially in drawing classes. I don't think I was ever taught or was ever told to have the same exact type of instruction that I had when I was taking drawing classes. But in drawing classes, though, I've been told a number of times to keep your eyes on what you're drawing 95% of the time, and 10% of the time looking at your paper. And I would suggest that while sculpting too. You keep your eyes on your subject. Like if you're sculpting a portrait, if you're drawing a portrait, you keep your eyes on the person that you're making the portrait of most of the time. And if you remember that, you keep that in practice, um, it will your skill level will skyrocket. I promise. I promise that. It works for me. I'm pretty sure it would work for most people too.